I was having a conversation with a woman the other day, which I have conversations occasionally with people I hardly know, and I was explaining to her how there is a petition out there right now in the state of Ohio where they're gathering signatures to put a ballot initiative on the state ballot to that would eliminate all property taxes in the state of Ohio. And I said this, and she says that sounds like a great idea. She says, and I said, no, it doesn't sound like a great idea. Property taxes are how we pay for the school system. And she says, well, the schools are lousy anyway, and all the schools are anyway lousy compared to what they used to be. You should see the test scores they have nowadays they aren't doing anything for the kids anymore. And I said to the lady, well, so your solution for that problem is to cut 50% of the funding out of the schools. You think that'll fix the schools? Because, well, no, I don't have any kids in the schools anymore anyway. My kids are grown up. So, this is a point, that I can't make to some people. As Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. said, taxes are the price of a civilized society. And I might, he was a Supreme Court justice back in the 1800s, I believe. But the point being that as long as she doesn't have any kids in the school, then why should we pay for the schools? And I looked it up online, and it said that about half of, the largest portion of funding for schools in Ohio are property taxes. It was 47%, it said, which is about half. And I don't understand. I don't have any kids in the school anymore. One of my kids still lives in Ohio, but I pay property taxes, and I don't understand why that's a big problem. I know it's not. I don't like to pay. She got mad at me too. She said, "Well, you like paying taxes?" She says, and I said, "No, I don't like paying taxes. I don't, but it's the price you pay for civilized society. I mean, how hard is that to understand? I don't like paying for bananas when I go to the store. I want to buy some bananas. I got to get some bananas. Why can't I just walk in, grab the bananas, and leave? Because that's not how it works. In order to have a store at all that will have bananas, you got to pay for them so that they can pay the person and they can make a profit and pay their workers and, la-di-da-di-da. Well, that's the same thing with taxes. If you take away 50% of the funding in the school system, the people's attitudes these days, I just don't understand. I don't understand their attitudes. It's like every man for this libertarian Ayn Rand attitude, where I don't want to pay taxes, and I think taxes are oppression. Well, it's called society. It's called a government. It's called culture. You have to educate the children. You have to have courthouses, right? I mean, this just reminds me. This generation, people, the way they think. There were some kids asked me, the other day, why do they have to take my taxes out of my paycheck? These kids I work with, they're young people. Said, I wish they wouldn't take my tax. We shouldn't have to pay taxes out of our payroll. And I understand. We can get into it later, but the rich people need to pay more, and the poor people, but we still should pay taxes, even if we're poor, because there's a lot of us. And what my attitude has been about taxes when coming out of my payroll is I don't pay attention to them. Honestly, I mean, I don't consider that to be my money I don't consider that any taxes that come out, my Social Security and my Medicare and my federal taxes and my state taxes and my city taxes, they all come out of my paycheck before I see the paycheck, you know? And then I got to pay property taxes on top of that when I pay my mortgage. But when I get my paycheck, all I'm looking at is how much money is deposited into my account. Well, when it used to be, when I didn't, when they didn't have direct deposit, it would be, the check that they would hand me, and I would have to put it in the bank. But that, I look at the check. I don't look at all the money they took out of my check. I look at the amount of the check. I worked this many hours for that much money. The rest of it is just not even considered in my mind. Because, if I make more money per hour, I'm going to make more money on my check. If I work more hours, I'm going to make more money on my check. And how much comes out as taxes, I don't even consider it. And I put the money into the bank, and I save the money, and I pay my bills accordingly. It's part of the price we pay for civilized society. I don't understand why people get all weirded out about that. It's like some guy the other day just saying, "Oh, I don't want to pay taxes." I said, "Well, I run into this all the time. It's a popular viewpoint in today's society that people are losing the concept of taxes and what they're for, because everybody, you look on the media and on the internet, they say everybody is crooked, everybody is rotten, everybody is a cheater, everybody is, that. Well, if you think that everybody is crooked, then maybe you're crooked. I mean, it takes one to know one. But this guy says this to me the other day. I don't like paying any of these taxes, and it's. I said to him, well, how do you buy roads? How do you get your? How about the police and the firemen and the I don't know. I'm losing my mind over this, because it's like this. I was at a party when I was in college. I used to go to these parties at people's houses that I don't even know. They'd invite me, and I'd go, and there was these two big dudes talking at the party. I'm drinking a beer, they're drinking beer, and they're saying, if you could rape a girl and get away with it, wouldn't you do it? And the other guy said, yeah, if you can get away with it. And I listened to these guys talk. I put down my beer. I walked out of the house. I left the party. I never came back there again. Well, yeah, if you can get away with it, then obviously the consideration of how you would affect society in general has no bearing upon your actions. See, and that's kind of the same philosophy as this I don't want to pay taxes. It's every man for himself, This is the attitude that will put us back into caveman times. If we don't want to work together as a society, as a civilized society, and I know there's some people crooked here, some people crooked there. I did another video on that. There's a lot of slop in the whole society and the whole culture. You got to subtract a little bit off of every level of culture, because yes, there are crooked people out there, and yes, there is mistakes and waste and fraud and that kind of thing. But that doesn't mean that you should just throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have to think positively about the government and the culture and getting the best possible society that we possibly can. And sometimes that costs money. I'm afraid. And maybe I'm wrong. And this is what I've been thinking lately. I come to my attitudes over many years, my upbringing, and maybe it's my emotional makeup or something. But a lot of people like to think that I'm in a bubble. I'm being brainwashed by liberal media. But I don't think that's true. I may be drawn to liberal media because I've always been a liberal. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we need to break up the government and not have any more taxes, no police, no courtrooms, no roads, no city management, no military, no schools. Yeah, just every man for himself. Everybody get a rifle, and if somebody comes near your house, you shoot them. If you like the look of them, you can let them in, but if you don't like the look of them, just shoot them. Nobody's going to get you in trouble because there's no police anymore, right? That's where we're heading. There's going to be roving gangs of marauders going through the suburbs, If you can rape a girl and get away with it, why wouldn't you do it, right? This is the attitude of the modern libertarian. I don't understand it, and I think it's, personally, I'm against it. So there.